So keeping in mind all of those areas that you need to touch on, here's just a sample. Your operations, your financial, and all the external areas that are going to need assessment that takes a lot of work to get there. Gary, do you have anything to add here?
Yeah, I just think back on the last slide and on this one as well. I like how this breaks it down into the different financial, external, and operational areas. But I've had the opportunity to speak in front of probably 7 or 8 different state rural health organizations, and have traveled to a lot of different places and had groups of 100 people. And I'm finding that there are some leaders in organizations that are under the impression that there's just a piece of software we're going to be able to buy to handle the ICD-10 transition. We're going to plug our ICD-9 codes in and wave our magic wand, and there's a piece of software that's going to really assist with that. I think this, the last couple of slides really show that though there are revenue cycle tools out there, it goes far beyond that from a solution perspective to a variety of different functional areas.
Thanks, Gary. So going into the technology impact analysis, it goes much deeper in this, but high level, this just gives you an idea of what you need to know about each of your systems that are out there that need to be updated. What applications, databases, interoperability feeds, and reporting are impacted by ICD-10. How pervasive or invasive is the impact on those systems? Will it, the ICD-10 change be vendor supported or required in-house changes? How is the vendor even aware and going to support it? For vendor supported systems, is there an acceptable upgrade remediation path? And are they on timeline to meet the deadline, or where is that at? What are the vendor related internal actions? What's going to be required by the vendor? Estimated timelines. What are the staffing resources needed in-house? And how will the IT department be able to sequence the system replacements, upgrades, and conduct all the testing required and still meet the dates of the entire project?
And if I may, Linda, real quick, I mean, when you looked at the documentation that Uncle Sam put out explaining why there was a 1-year delay for ICD-10 as opposed to 2 years, or as opposed to the strategy of skipping ICD-10 and going to ICD-11, when you really looked at the reason that they used to justify the delay, it comes down to testing. The transition that was made about 18 months ago to what are called the HIPAA 5010 transactional code set, how electronic health data is moved within our organization and to payers, really hit a lot of roadblocks because of failure to perform thorough and adequate testing. And it turned out it was actually from the payer's perspective, where they weren't doing enough. But the constant theme was testing and the need to make sure that test transactions and the IT side of the thing really comes into play. The risk, when it comes down to it, is receiving $0 for any services we provide after October 1st of 2014 if our systems are not up to snuff, more importantly, if the payers aren't able to accept it. So I would like to place an emphasis there, as you did. Thank you.
That's a very good point, Gary. And also just to reiterate that, this is very high level what you need to find out from your vendors and talk to your vendors and your payers. The list of questions is quite extensive on whenever you're doing your assessment and with all of your vendors. To gather the data takes about 2 to 3 months, and you'll see that a little later where we have some estimates on how long it takes, because getting these vendors to respond to you and provide the feedback and the information that you need is not easy. They're not responding as well as we would all like.
Right, and we always hear that where Medicare goes, everybody follows. I should point out as a quick little aside that Medicare announced about 2 or 3 weeks ago they would not be accepting test transactions. So there is no central kind of unifying body establishing a set of testing guidelines to follow. It's going to be vendor by vendor, just something to consider. Thank you.
Absolutely. So going a little bit more into the vendors, and it goes into more about contacting the vendor, your clearinghouses, your billing services, and payers. Talk to your payers about any contract negotiations that may need to be done as a result of moving to ICD-10. review audit coverage and medical policy changes, impact on coverage decisions and reporting requirements. I think Gary kind of hit all of that. So after you've done some of that and done your assessment, the beginning assessment, you're going to develop some solution alternatives. You need to be prepared that everything is not going to come out just like you plan. You're going to have to be ready to do some if-thens, evaluate your options for implementation and compliance, focus on your competitive advantage and strategic imperatives to support your evaluation, and select future state solutions that best meet your objectives and constraints. Develop more detail on your technology and operations and the impacts of the solution, and then make sure you have a budget, including your personnel, that will help you with that. Then after you've done that, you need to move into a gap analysis. Again, this is saying, okay, here's where we are, and here's where we need to be, and what's it going to take to get there. So that's a really important piece, because that your goal and your strategy of where you're going to end up may be completely different than from where you are today, and you have to make some different decisions, and it may end up costing more money because you have to change a vendor or upgrade something that you hadn't planned on. So those are things that you can be prepared for and be ready to handle as they come along.